Hi, everyone. I'm Beth Camden, and I'm going to start this presentation about the evaluation and evolution of the Share-VDE catalog. Since we've already been introduced, we'll move on to the next slide. So for those of you that may not be familiar, I will start with a quick review of what is Share-VDE. And we think of it as three things. It's community, it's technology, and it's a discovery environment. And we're going to focus today on the discovery environment, but I wanted to start with some about the community. It's a partnership of libraries working together with Castellini Libri and AtCult, and part of the larger Share family of linked open data projects. Share-VDE has been a leader in library linked open data and BibFrame since 2016 and offers a suite of tools and services. We're going to move on to the next slide, please. So the Share-VDE community is governed by a number of groups led by the Advisory Council, which all the member libraries participate in, and along with a series of working groups which influence and help the development of the system. Let's move to the next slide, please. The larger Share family includes Share-VDE and several other tenants, including Kubicat, the Share Catalog, the National Bibliographies Group, and the PCC Data Pool. That's the program for cooperative cataloging. And by joining together all of the Share family into a tenant infrastructure, we have joint development and shared resources in the development of Share-VDE and the other parts of the Share family. Next slide, please. The Share-VDE suite of tools and services includes a data conversion service from MARC data to BibFrame, and it uses the member-developed data model. Share-VDE data model is an extension to BibFrame 2.0 for, and the extensions we added allows a greater compatibility with the LRM data model. We also have a cluster knowledge base known as Sapientia, and all of the BibFrame data is clustered in this database, that is the driving force for the BibFrame catalog. We also have the JCricket entity editor, and since the initial clustering is machine-based, JCricket is the human element in the entity management and will allow humans to merge and divide clusters, correct the machine processes where needed. And finally, we have the BibFrame catalog, which is available through the link you see here. It's been public for about a year now, and it is still in beta, but it is a very interesting exploration of how an entity-based catalog can present library data. And the rest of the presentation will focus on that, and we'll move it on to Kayt.
Thank you, Beth. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of the updates to the iterative testing that we've been doing over the last year. So seen here, we have some of the user responses to the 3 prototypes of concept pages that we've been working with. So just for background, the majority of our testing has focused on things like task analysis, prototype testing and feedback, usability benchmarking, and primarily, especially with this most recent testing cycle, stakeholder interviews. So in terms of method, we've been recording participant screen shares in Zoom and then walking them through a script of consistent UX testing. So in terms of this most recent cycle, these are the participant profiles. So we've been working with users from across different campus community experiences. We asked related questions, things like self-reported experience searching in online catalogs, questions as well along the lines of, when you're looking for background information, what's your current methodology for finding both background information and related information? So you can see we have some consistency in terms of mining bibliographies, some JSTOR users, and a lot of Google and Google Scholar. Another question that we asked users at the end of the test was to sum up what they felt this interface might be capable of doing. And again, it's worth noting here that they were working from primarily static prototype images of 3 different concept pages. And the types of responses that we saw were things like, that it parsed resources and sources into different categories, that articles were all linked together by subgrouping or by general topic. We had one adjunct faculty member mention that it was a little bit like an old card catalog in the library, as he put it, and that it includes links that let you to get information that you need about a particular topic. So some of the questions that we asked that I wanted to pull out for today, we asked users to look at tabs like the topic and events related to this tab. We asked them to identify an expectation before moving into that tab to review content. All of our users matched expectation to content and described concept page content like this to be things like topic milestones and research touchstones that could help them to expand on a project. We also asked them if the describing information was useful or not useful, and if they clued into some of the things that they were looking at. We received answers like that it wasn't quite clear what was a concept page, click through, or a particular work. We also had one user identify that, in this case, demonstration as a type might make more sense than riot. So it was useful to get direct feedback from users in this vein. Another question that we asked, and you can see here another of the concept pages that we worked with, was for users to delineate between original works by and publications by. And here our users successfully made that distinction and had a couple of suggestions for us, such as being able to derive those context clues about what original works by might mean, in contrast to publications if the publications tab came first. Another suggestion that we received was to consolidate original works and publications into one tab that you could then filter by format or by source. So along the lines of those questions here, we asked them if related topics and events would be a useful or not useful concept within the path of their search. All of our users responded yes, they found that to be a positive addition in terms of background information for expanding what they might be able to add to their particular research project. And then the last concept page that we worked with was a place page here. We asked users about whether or not the events that took place here made sense within the context of the other tabs that they were looking at, and had a number of interesting responses for works published here. We had suggestions from users that perhaps this could be newspapers or more informal community-based publications in addition to particular publishers or presses in a location. And we asked them also, at what points in your research process could it be useful to connect to this particular resource? So the responses that we got generally grouped within the beginning and the middle phases of research. We had one user note that this would be a first-line source when starting a research paper, that this would be where they would want to go to, that it would replace Google and Google Scholar for them. We saw that it would be very useful in terms of narrowing down a search topic. And we had another, a researcher mentioned, again, that this might replace their particular starting point, which again, we knew to be Google, in that unlike a search engine, you don't miss seminal events. And then to wrap up in terms of the update for user testing, we also implemented the standardized user experience percentile rank questionnaire adapted for libraries work. So this covered usability, trust and credibility, appearance, and in place of where you might see loyalty in e-commerce sites, we looked at engagement. So we asked questions related to the UI, we asked questions related to usability, we asked questions about desire to return to this search environment, and as you can see, largely had a very positive response. So 2 of these responses we had to throw out, and for anything that was neutral or negative, I followed up with users to talk about why they might have given that score, and learned that the only reason that they weren't providing a positive score was that they wanted to immediately be able to move to the next step to acquire the particular resources that they might have been searching for. So this was something that we found with 3 of our users who said, where can I get the beta? How can I start using this now? And I'll go ahead and pass it along to Jen.
Okay, thank you, Kayt and Beth. As was mentioned in the introduction, this Share-VDE is implementing a entity-based search, and so putting in place ways to navigate relationships. So on the next slide, what we see is the framing of the tasks that we're exploring, and we framed a lot of the questions were kind of funneled through LRM user tasks, and really what we're looking at is like, how do the elements of our bibliographic model, which users don't need to know about, but for in terms of evaluating and evolving the service, how are they fulfilling, like, these models, how do they fulfill user tasks? And some interesting, though we thought about the identifying user task early on in our search, and then we circled back around to the explore task, which is really using relationships among different resources. And if you think about the way that many scholars are approaching sort of interdisciplinary work, understanding quickly the structure of a subject domain and its terminology is quite important. So on the next slide, we sort of highlight more broadly the user tasks. There's not all tasks. This isn't a Google map. It's not point A to point B, or even A, B to C. It's really all tasks are able to be repeated. You can use identify and obtain in parallel, and there's a lot more on this in the reference model, which is great reading. Take it to a cafe, grab some coffee, and go through it. So I highlighted here the relationships between them, and thus placing resources in context. So as users are navigating our collections, what they're doing is finding their context within the Share-VDE is helping them find context within their search. So it's kind of taking us into sort of what the entity relationships enable. So on our next, I think to kind of conclude, we're looking at implementing this hybrid approach to linked data strategy, which is building upon existing systems like mark-based systems, and pulling in sort of entity-based autocomplete where we can. Also, we saw with BibCard implementations various use cases for author search. So I think our next slide is the last one. Really what we're looking at is these patterns that support exploration, playing to the strengths of what linked data can do, while at the same time building upon the stuff that is already working well, like precise searching works pretty good with keyword searching, but we can help complement that with some of the entity-based relationships. So we're gonna focus in on sort of the Share-VDE infrastructure as like an API, and just how can we provide various methods of search assistance. And so we think we can do certainly alternative terms, query reformulations, and best bets, and then all this relies on the Share-VDE infrastructure to pull that search assistance data in. So we have these mock-ups were from Filip, and so he's available too to answer questions. But we're all here and happy to answer any questions we can about this work. Thank you.